Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for watching tonight on this Sunday night special of BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I have a number of guests who will be weighing in a roundtable discussion basically about the Iran strike, and if we get to it, conspiracy theories, proven conspiracy reality. We may or may not make it to that tonight. And so I'd like to bring everybody else in. And first, we have Mr. LYLE Armstrong.
Hey, welcome. Thank you for having me.
And we have Stephen Hall.
Thank you very much.
We have Rowdy Rick. And thanks to everybody for being here. We may have another individual. I am not certain yet. But in any event, thanks everyone for being here. You can find us live on KLRN on the SHR Media YouTube channel and X and Twitch and a host of other places. And I am glad that everybody is here tonight. I'm weird. We just discussed this not long ago. Oh, and I'm sorry. Here we go. We have Big E. Big E, thank you for being here tonight, sir.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And I don't have it tonight, but I am going to start promoting on Tuesday night again all the shirts that I have, because oh man, do you have great merch. But I will say this: I can hold this with my left hand, and I've got my Mark I Model 1 SHR very colorful media mug right here, which by the way is really sturdy. And this could be a combat mug. If you were being assaulted by someone, and if you hit them with this mug, they'd go down in one shot.
Absolutely.
So kudos to EARL for designing something that is so incredibly substantial. God,
I got to give the props to my wife on that one.
Well, the graphics, yes, and the mug itself, oh my God, that could be used as a combat mug. So very briefly, if you could, for some of the people, if we have any new folks here tonight, I'll start with Lyle, and just tell us just a brief bit about yourself, and then we'll start rocking and rolling. Lyle, tell us about yourself, if you would, please.
I'm Lyle Armstrong, 22-year military combat vet, currently the host of Beer and Bullstein on Fridays and Saturdays here on SHR Media, 7 o'clock.
Perfect.
PM Eastern.
SHR Media. Stephen L. Hall from KLRN. Tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Well, I am overeducated and have a show on KLRN radio called Inquiry, where I get grilled by the interrogator and respond to whatever questions get posed to me.
Cool. And Big E, tell us about your show.
Well, I am Big E, Earl Jackson, and I host the Mission Ready Men Briefing on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Central Time. And I analyze the news of the day from a Christian, biblically grounded perspective. And I am only a 4-year veteran of the United States Air Force, but I have some law enforcement experience as well. But I come at these things from with that range of experience as well as a Christian perspective.
And Rowdy Rick Robinson of KLRN, tell us a little bit about yourself.
General Manager, KLRN Radio, also host of several shows over there, everything ranging from political solo shows to political co-hosted shows to conspiratainment and pretty much everything in between that I'm involved in one way or the other. Spent about a grand total of 16 years of my life in one form or another with a badge and a gun. And other than that, I write satirical pieces over at Twitchy and write for a few other places. And I do this all the time, talking about things that matter, trying to wake people up before it's too late.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to start with a very serious thing. This is a new video from Trump.
Assalamu alaikum, bitches. This is your new supreme leader speaking. Well, I warned Ali this would happen, and he just kept talking trash like we couldn't Maduro his old ass. Anyway, enjoy your new freedom, people. We're going to have bikini parties, all-you-can-eat buffets, dancing to country music, and singing karaoke all night long. We're going to have the best fiestas with delicious margaritas and sexy mamacitas. If you're a woman, you can finally take off that ridiculous bedsheet these idiots made you wear. You're free to be smart and beautiful and to wear whatever you want. Under my regime, you can now vote, as long as you vote Republican. If you think about it, you can only vote Republican because there will be no Democrat Party here. Everything they touch turns to shit, believe me.
and that just in from Donald Trump. I had to go serious. I'm going to go very serious here just for a moment also. And let me see. No, I'm not going to hit that. I'm going to hit this. Very few people seem to have heard this. I'm not exactly sure. But when I first saw it about, I'm going to guess 2 years or so ago, this is Congressman Wesley Hunt and both cool dudes and another guy named Byron Donalds. And they tell a little story about President Trump. And if if you'd been listening to this, perhaps you would have been a better judge of President Trump.
We're being feasted upon by other countries. This is the definition of weakness. I'm a risk taker. I know you are. I know you are.
Damn, this is not the cut that I wanted. Son of a gun, I'm going to have to come back to this. All right, I thought I had the 2-minute cut that was just superior, and I bet everybody here knows what that was. In the meantime,
I remember it.
Oh, yeah. Here's a little bit of CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who was talking about acts of war committed against the United States prior to what occurred. I want to play this just for a moment.
It's no secret that the Democrats want to obtain a ceasefire in advance of the presidential election coming up to help Kamala Harris. And in so doing, they're really willing to put politics above our national security. And it is troubling, Maria, because how far are they willing to go? Well, as you point out, they're willing to ignore acts of war. I mean, when our own intelligence community tells us that they're hacking into the Trump campaign to help Kamala Harris win the election, when they engage in an act of war of trying to assassinate President Trump, and perhaps most importantly, when they engage in the act of war of firing through its Houthi-controlled rebels ballistic missiles at 3 U.S. warships, and there had been no actions and no consequences to those acts of war by Iran, it unfortunately tells you how far the Democrats are willing to go to stop Donald Trump. And, I think larger at play here, Maria, is not just this short-term election, but that it really reveals the failed strategy of the Democrats over the last 10 years in dealing with Iran.
So we got here because it was a failed strategy. And a lot of individuals in politics could have stopped, in my opinion, much of what occurred if they just took the history of Iran into consideration. Who in their right mind, for example, then I'll turn it over to everybody here, who would believe and attempt to negotiate with a country that has broken or completely disavowed any negotiation or any contract that was allegedly signed or an agreement? They have historically never held up their end of the log when asked to or delivered $1.6 billion by Barack Hussein Obama in the back of a C-17 in the dead of night. So gents, I'd like you to weigh in, if you would, please, a little bit about how did we get here? In my opinion, we got here because of setting Iran and a good portion of the Middle East on ignore mode. Lyle.
Basically, we funded it. And I'm not sure it was actually 1.6 billion. Wasn't it closer to 5 that we delivered?
It could have been that. That's just off the top of my lacking.
Yeah, that's one way or the other. It is a boatload of money that we basically or an airplane full of money that we actually hand delivered to them for them to distribute out to all of their little partners. You know, we know that they were backing the Houthis. We know historically Iran has backed Hezbollah and Hamas. We just killed one of the top, or not we, but Israel just killed one of the top Hamas or Hezbollah lieutenants, which is actually a good piece of information, good news. But that's what they did, was we sent them money and they lit it on fire by spreading it out just to come back at us and our allies.
Well, and that money was used like a big bad boomerang to come back and kill Americans. Stephen Hall, any thoughts?
Oh, I'm trying to think of exactly what
On how it is that we ignored Iran, or we fed the little teeny lizard, and it's we and folks like us who are responsible for creating the big dragon.
Well, anytime you allow people to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, it's an encouragement. And that's what we've done ever since Carter, when they and a little bit before Carter, but every time they do something which is crossing the lines and causes belli, if you will, we've tried to be cautious, but not actually try to engage in retaliation, because we kind of want to we were trying since the Soviets to keep this balance between Iraq and Iran, thinking that the same mutual assured destruction that kept world peace would somehow work in the Middle East. That people would have their own self-preservation beyond their hatred of their opponents. And that's just not the mindset you're dealing with. And you can't project one cultural mindset on another. So,
and I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
I was pretty much finished.
Okay. Big E, what do you think, sir?
Well, we did pretty much put them on ignore mode, like you said. And one of the biggest issues is that we think that everybody thinks like us, similar to what Stephen was saying. We think that everybody wants democracy. We think that everybody wants a representative republic like we have, and that's just not true. We have thousands of years of history to prove that that's not true. And yes, the Iranian people are happy that they've been somewhat liberated at this point. We've seen people dancing in the streets here and over there. But at the end of the day, what ended up happening was that we just decided that we were going to make this happen. And then when it didn't, we find ourselves in a situation where we have no choice but to intervene the way we did. And there's intelligence now. I just saw reports earlier today. There are reports now that we had intelligence that they were going to strike us. And so
I hadn't seen that.
Yeah. I'll throw it up in the chat. But yeah, we put them on ignore mode. We paid them. We appeased them. And this is what appeasement always gets.
Rick Robinson, what do you think, sir?
Well, I mean, I did an entire show on this about, 3-4 weeks ago, explaining how this has always been our mess to clean up because we made it. This was all started by policy decisions that were started before, well, I can't say before most of us on this panel were alive, but I know they were before I was alive. Because this all started in the 50s,
1950s, exactly.
When we basically decided, because we wanted to bring stability to this region because of their oil, we started meddling. And then when things didn't go quite the way we wanted them to go, yeah, we did. We started throwing money at them to try to appease them. Then we put them on ignore mode. Then this has been a back and forth cycle for so long that it's just insane. I mean, this is something that should have been dealt with in 1980. After 1979, there should have been no reason that regime was allowed to exist after 1979. None, not with everything that they did. So this is something that's been happening for a long time. One of the things that I find most delicious, and there may not be a lot of people that know this, but we killed the Ayatollah on the 11th day of the 9th month of the Islamic calendar.
Yes.
So we basically took 9/11 and shoved it up their ass sideways.
During as let's see if I can find this, as this individual said right there. I also have to ask you guys, do human mouths, do they customly form themselves that way? I mean, I'm not sure that I know how you can do that, but apparently it is possible, as this person proves right here. And she objected to, hey, you attacked Iran during Ramadan. And you probably can't see this, but there's a guy named Molsici who says, hey, Ilhan, just for your information, we Iranians don't give a shit about Ramadan. Matter of fact, I'm having lunch right now. So, they don't know. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
I was just laughing because, it's hysterical to me. Because, everybody seems to forget that most of Iran is Persian. They're secular. They were secular until 1979. They want to go back to being secular again, which is why you saw so many people dancing in the streets, which is kind of a weird contrast when you think about it, because according to the media, there's bombs dropping everywhere, there's kids being killed, but then you're seeing smuggled out images of people dancing in the streets and women dancing with makeup on without their hijabs and burqas and everything else. And I'm like, one of these things is not like the other, folks.
Well,
Christianity, I guarantee you nobody was paying them to do that stuff either.
No, Christianity happens to be one of the biggest burgeoning religions in Iran right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's happening worldwide right now.
Zoroastrianism is making a bit of a comeback.
Say that again, Steve.
I said Zoroastrianism is making a bit of a comeback.
I've heard that, but I do not know its nature.
It was heavily influenced Christianity and Judaism.
Oh, okay. All righty. Hey, I want to go to this just for a second and have Lyle weigh in on it, because Lyle mentioned this to me just before the show. From Warfront Witness on Telegram, hostile aircraft intrusion alert for the Shlomi area, northern Israel. Have you happened to heard anything further about that, Lyle?
Yeah, what that actually was a drone attack coming from Iran that came in and hit an unknown target. There was also another drone attack at the approximately the exact same time that apparently, I don't have confirmed sources just yet, actually went all the way out to Cyprus and hit an RAF base out there, a British base. So it's looked like a coordinated attack going on all at once. There was at the approximate same time, there was other attacks going into Kuwait, 4 drones going into Kuwait. I don't know if they actually hit their targets or not, but this one was the big red alert sirens going off everywhere attack into northern Israel at the time.
Well, like the people in UK, like Starmer was saying, repeating Michael Corleone, just as soon as I try to get out, they drag me back in. Because the UK was saying, look, hey, don't, and I believe these are very similar to the precise words that Starmer said a day or two ago. We're not involved. We don't want to get involved in this. One of the major reasons they're not interested. Yeah, they are now. One of the major reasons they're not interested is they are subsumed with muzzies in the UK, and they don't want to stir up the maggots in their country. But that's all self-defeating. They did that by themselves, all on the heels of Angela Merkel from the lovely Syria. Anyway, to continue, the other thing that I was speaking with Lyle about before we went on the air was, and Lyle or anybody else, if you have any additions to this, I want to make a clear and distinct difference between the two sects that are getting involved. And very, very infrequently do we ever hear the American media maggots addressing this. We're talking about two kinds of sects here in the Middle East, Sunni and Shia. So Sunni Islam, like ISIS, for example, and you're going to need, folks, you're going to need cards, like flashcards to keep all this shit in line, to remember who hates who loves who, etc. But I want to make the distinction. Sunni Islam, like I say, for example, ISIS hates Iranians. Iranians are Shia. Sunni Arabs were responsible for 9/11. Iran is Shia, the largest number of Shiites in the world. I could make a joke about that right now, but I'm not going to. Saudi Arabia.
We could, but none of us would give a Shiite. So.
That's thank you for going there, because I certainly wasn't, or maybe I was. First one of the night. Thank you. The other thing is Saudi Arabia, mostly Sunni. Around the globe, the Sunni are a majority and Shiites are a minority. Syria, for example, was mostly Sunni. So ISIS, I'm sorry for throwing so much crap up immediately. ISIS equals ISIL equals Daesh equals Sunni equals they're Wahhabists. So Iran was predominantly helping and funding Syria. Iran is Shia and ISIS is Sunni. So at the time, for example, like it was ISIS versus Assad, and the US and everybody else are essentially fighting both. We're also arming a third force, like a rebel force, which has ties to Al-Qaeda. And then it gets into Alawites, Muslim minority groups. They're about 12% of Syria's population. They have doctrinal differences. The vast majority of Muslims in the world, like I say, are Sunni. Probably about 85% of Islam. They're spread all over the world. And everybody thinks that the greatest number of Muslims are in the Middle East. No, wrong. Absolutely wrong. Wait, wrong. It's Indonesia has the largest number of Muslims in the world. So it's not just a simple matter of looking at lines on a map. You have to understand all the actors. And like I've said for quite some time, and I'm going to fall back on LYLE for this just for a moment. When I had guys that came back from the sandbox that were working for me before I retired, I would ask them, because once I heard this, I wanted to find out if this is true or bullshit. And once the first soldier who came back and started working for me said this, I thought, I don't know, this doesn't sound. And he said, okay, what you have to understand, one of the first things that I discovered about working there is that women are for procreation and boys are for sexual pleasure.
I knew this was about Thursday nights.
Okay. And then a second person came back and said essentially the same thing. Then it became an art form to me. Then I had to ask everyone that had worked there, that had come back and returned, and essentially to a man and one woman also said the exact same thing. So we're dealing with individuals who have customs that are very different from ours. And
absolutely.
we have to understand that these are cultures. There's a saying that I guess you could say that I've enveloped with my little winky arms for a long time. And the saying that I've heard from them and others is, if you want to understand Islam, it's me against my brother and me against my cousin, me, my brothers, and my cousins against the tribe. and then me, my brothers, my cousins, and my tribe against the outsider. So Islam, at least as practiced in the Middle East, is very nomadic, very tribal. They don't necessarily recognize little lines plotted on a map. And these are the people with a much different mindset than us that we're fighting, who also have been rather facile adopters of technology as well. So having said that, Lyle, is there anything that I've said or anybody else who wants input? Am I way out of turn by describing Islam, at least in the Middle East, and that's the version that we're fighting now? Is that way out of line?
You're not out of the theater. You're still in the rows, waiting for the movie to start. We actually had a guy on the side of a mountain on a mission, waiting for we were waiting to go. It's still dark. We were waiting for first light, and one of our team members, who was a smaller statured individual, fully grown man, don't get me wrong, but he's a small dude, looked like a boy, and one of the ANA commanders, the Afghanistan National Army Special Forces commander, came over and pinched his lip like this, which I guess is kind of the how I guess prisoners would do it with the inside pocket kind of thing. You're going to be mine. At that point, 4 of us jumped on that guy and made him wish he died as a child. So yeah, so it's there. I'm not saying that everybody does it. I'm just saying that it is there. And it doesn't matter if it's coming from the good guys or the bad guys. We asked once, why is it always Thursday? And that's the day supposedly Allah blinks, and they can do whatever. And you can always tell who the female was the next morning by whoever had his fingernails painted. So
lovely,
fun stories. I honestly didn't think I was going to be telling that story here tonight.
And then you met me, and here I am, and here we are. Now, Earl just sent this to me. We saw that's sort of breaking right now that Lyle was talking about. And then I was also sent this by Big E and Earl. Did you happen to read that story, and what's it about? I just saw this, so maybe you can tell us what's going on with regard to this story.
That was what I alluded to earlier about the reports that there was intelligence that Iran was going to strike, they were going to strike our ships and try to sink some of our naval vessels. And that was the impetus for President Trump to say, okay, we're gonna preemptively beat the snot out of them. And that's what prompted the strikes that ensued on Sunday morning.
So I'm looking at Scott Jennings, what he wrote on X in this story. Senior Trump administration officials telling me credible intelligence indicated Iran planned preemptive missile strikes against U.S. military targets in the region and against civilian targets. Failure to act would have resulted in mass U.S. casualties, which is very interesting because, again, you guys weigh in. I haven't heard one damn thing about that on any of the American media maggots. Not.
You notice that was PJ Media. That's not that's not your American Pravda outlet. That is part of Town Hall Twitchy's network.
Yeah, that's part of Town Hall Salem Media. So they usually try to be a little more open about things when they find them. But I mean, so just to put this into perspective, because everybody kept asking, why did we do this in the middle of the day? We've almost throughout history, most of the time when we've started an attack, especially in the Middle East, it's usually been in the dead of night because that's when stealth works best, etc.
Yep.
But the fact that we're now seeing this from PJ Media lines up with the fact that so many of their leadership was in one place at the same time. They were lining out the last bits of that plan, I guarantee you. And they got brave and did it that day because they're like, well, since they didn't attack us last night, apparently they're not planning to right now. So it probably won't happen until tonight. And by then we'll have already pulled the trigger. And then next thing you know, the Ayatollah is standing in front of Allah going, where are my 72 versions? No, I'm sorry, that was a misprint. That you actually get Virgils.
Well, and I saw something, I believe yesterday, that they know that these strikes usually happen at night, and when day broke, they let their guard down,
and they felt secure.
And they have been, I guess, from what I read, and I can't remember which outlet I read it on, but they have been kind of lackadaisical with their security because they just didn't think anything was going to happen, despite all of the buildup in the area. They just thought it was for show, I guess, but they found
That's
out.
Literally from the art of war. Attack when your enemy feels strong.
Yeah,
it's demoralizing. They're lackadaisical. They're complacent. That's when you attack, is when they feel strong.
Well, I mean, and to be fair, they were dealing with Biden for 4 years. Just to back up a minute, because we were talking about total money given, it was 1.7 billion by Obama and 6 billion by Biden. So it was actually almost 8 billion by the time we were.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So. Now, granted, this was technically unfreezing money that belonged to them, but remember, this is a terrorist organization and a terrorist state. This is one of the reasons why I laugh so much about the war powers blubbering, because first of all, if a president actually had the stones to send the War Powers Act back up to the Supreme Court, they would probably find it unconstitutional. But with everything that was declared after 9/11 and Iran being a terrorist state, he can do whatever he wants. Because it's the war on terror never ended, folks. It's still a thing. And he still has all of those powers that they passed after 9/11. So the Senate and the Congress can whine all they want. They gave him carte blanche. Well, they may not want to admit it, but they gave him carte blanche.
Yeah.
Monday is going to be, tomorrow is going to be, and it's almost tomorrow on the East Coast. Like, for example, where LYLE is right now. Tomorrow, this is going to be a huge, huge issue. And I want to read from this and then have Stephen Hall weigh in. And for those of you who can't read the really, really small print, if you're watching on YouTube right now, it says, under the U.S. Constitution, the president serves as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Article 2, Section 2. While Congress has the power to declare war, Article 1, Section 8, however, the specific requirement for notifying Congress about military actions stems from the War Powers Resolution of 1973, a federal law enacted to balance these powers and ensure congressional oversight. It's my understanding, however, that President Trump was able to get a hold of 7 of the 8 senators to let them know what was going on. And it also says, essentially, without congressional authorization, like a specific declaration of war, U.S. forces must be withdrawn within 60 days. What that intimates and essentially says is, yes, the president can do that, has 60 days and a possible 30-day extension if the president says that's necessary for safe removal. Now, having made that statement, Stephen Hall, maybe you can provide some insight onto this situation right now, because I and the 4 others here, we're pretty damn certain that Congress, particularly Democrats and a couple of Republicans, are going to make huge grist for the mill out of this. So, Stephen, do you have any insight into this?
Yeah, they're going to play it for all it's worth. But as Politibuddy pointed out, the Congress hasn't declared war since 1942. And how many wars have we been in that have not been declared?
A ton.
It's one of those things where, if you look at traditionally, it is an honorable thing to declare war, then you go send your troops into battle. The more modern aspect is war happens so fast that there may not be time to declare war. One of the issues that comes up, particularly in the Cold War, and that's when this was signed in 1973, is if Russia launched a whole bunch of missiles, a whole battery of missiles, everything they had, to try to win an instant war, you have about 20 minutes to retaliate before the bombs start landing. That is not enough time to convene Congress, much less get a declaration of war. So the War Powers Act was created on that concept. It's been used a number of times to send troops into areas. I mean, Reagan used it in Grenada under the pretext that there was American college students in a university on Grenada, and Russian troops were scheduled to land there. Almost every president has used it. The problem you run into is the hypocrisy of them going, well, it's not technically what we did, and yet it is. It's hard for any political side to go, we used it, but they abused it on the other side. Now, technically, there are certain requirements, and this is where you get into the black letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law is pretty much what they are saying, and they're correct, that this is supposed to be used when we are under attack to be able to respond or have an imminent attack. The problem is, can you be certain that there was an imminent attack when the attack didn't happen? When you preemptively do it. And it's always questionable, and it's hard to prove. You can release your intelligence, and hopefully there's some smoking gun there. But whether there is or not, this is not unprecedented. We've done this a number of times. Do I like it? No, I'm old-fashioned. I want a formal declaration of war. I want this hand delivered with a wax seal going, we are now declaring war on you. Will we begin hostilities on such and such a date? But that is not reality in the modern warfare. The surprise attack has a certain advantage.
I mean, it's almost never been a part of our history, though. I mean, look at how Washington did warfare. If there was a Hague court during the Revolutionary War, we would have been brought up on war crimes for the things that we did. We basically either stole, I don't remember if we were the first ones to ever do it, but we either stole the idea of guerrilla warfare or invented it, because we were the first ones to just do
I'm not talking
crazy
about tactics, I'm talking about the war itself.
But
we had a Declaration of Independence.
Yeah,
we signed the Declaration of Independence. Okay, we are done. We are now independent. We had a declaration of war. That's what the Declaration of Independence was. The Japanese...
Not according to England, because we were traitors. We didn't have the authority to declare anything. So that's what I'm saying.
Anybody that declares a rebellion is going to be that.
This is all about...
I remember Japan was looked down upon because their declaration of war did not come until after the bombs fell. Now, you don't have to give a lot of notice. It's like, bombs are falling. The planes are already on the way. By the way, we are at war. And then the bombs start falling. But due to a miscommunication, Japan delivered the declaration of war after the attack on Pearl Harbor.
That's true.
That had to do with the time change. And they were looked down upon because that was not proper etiquette. But since World War II, you don't really have declarations of war anymore. Once they learned the concept of blitzkrieg, that you could overwhelm people quickly, that formality kind of went by the wayside.
Well, with the divide tomorrow, we're going to have essentially 50% saying it's unconstitutional and another 50%, roughly give or take, saying that it's constitutional. The other thing that we have to figure in, like General Mark Milley in China, who said that, yeah, I'd make a phone call to China if I discovered that President Trump 45 at that point was going to conduct some kind of action against China. Hello.
Yeah, declaring yourself a traitor, probably not the best broadcasting.
No. And then there's a guy named Filder who said, I like the new U.S. military strategy where we don't tell the mainstream media or corrupt politicians about our plans until they've already been carried out successfully, so they can't run and leak info to our enemies in advance like the traitors they are. Traitor 1, Traitor 2, and a host of others. So yeah, tomorrow's going to be the debate about constitutionality, but there's other something else that I want to throw in the mix here, and I've got a couple of other examples of it. Rick Robinson sent me this. Okay, this is indicated as some of the most powerful footage to come out of day where Israelis and Iranians are dancing and celebrating side by side in the streets of London right here. And it looks like you can clearly tell the Israelis from everybody else. And there's a whole host of other footage very similar to that.
Yeah.
But there are people celebrating all around the world except the British and the American governments and a few other governments as well.
And well, don't forget that all the
guilty overeducated white people.
Yeah.
A political argument or a legal argument resounds a lot better if it is not blatantly hypocritical, and if you had made the same argument when the people you support did the same thing. And that's when it falls on deaf ears and it just becomes completely partisan. So it doesn't really matter what the law says. It's a political issue. It's no longer in the realm of law once you start going, well, we did it before, but now that you're doing it, it's really horrible. And that happens on both sides.
Stephen Hall, we talked about this on your show. That was one of the questions that I asked you on Inquiry, which was, okay, how is it that federal judges, district judges, get to issue an edict from the court, from their bench, which is effective all across the boneyard land? And the answer that you said was, well, it's not really right, but they're going to get away with it and do it. And then I pressed further and said, well, then why don't we just shut this down? And you said something similar to, well, if you want to go ahead and foment a revolution, you can do that. But somebody somewhere is going to have to decide. And at this point, it doesn't seem like SCOTUS is particularly interested in taking on anything political these days. So it's going to end up in a stalemate. But since you guys were talking about that, here's some video that I discovered from, oh, look, Australia, Canada, Britain, Switzerland, Germany, and France. All celebrating.
Oh, that looks like they're very, very upset.
And there's a lot more of that. Where that
lot more.
There's a ton more where that came from. And so the question should be, like I said, I think the newest figure is 85% of the world of 1.7 or 1.8 billion Muslims is Sunni. They live all across places like Turkey and Pakistan. Pakistan, very important. India, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Indonesia, and then the kind of smaller exceptions, which it turns out in this case are very important. Iraq, Bahrain are largely Shiite, the minority, but so is Iran as well. And here's the question that everybody's been answering. I think I have an answer, but I want to see what you guys think. So one of the first things that Iran decides that it's going to do is, okay, let's see. Bahrain, they hit the U.S. Navy 5th Fleet headquarters, and no casualty figures yet. I think there have been 3 Americans killed. Okay, so they sent missiles into Bahrain. Iran sent missiles into Bahrain. The UAE, missiles were intercepted by the Emirati air defenses. In Abu Dhabi, Qatar, missile intercepted. Kuwait, Jordan, 2 Iranian ballistic missiles shot down by Jordanian military. Saudi Arabia, big mistake on this, especially since, if I can find the article indicating that Saudi Arabia just joined the USA in the military operation against Japan, or excuse me, against Iran.
Right now, we're just getting word that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia says they will join the U.S. in the operation against the Islamic Republic of Iran. They said that this comes in the wake of Iran attacking the U.S. base in Saudi Arabia. I just spoke to a senior U.S. official who said the Iranians made a big.
Okay, so you've pissed off the Saudis, and then there's also this from CNN.
I want to go back to that breaking news just into CNN about Saudi Arabia. It says that it is prepared to respond if Iran continues its retaliatory attacks. CNN international diplomatic editor Nick Robertson.
So I can understand why it is that they sent missiles. Okay, the U.S. has military installations all across the Middle East. I get that. But then shooting missiles into hotels, residences, buildings, etc., like that. Insight, please, from anybody here.
Well, and also, I just saw this report that the school that they blamed on the United States missile attack was actually a failed launch of Iranian missiles. So, I mean, these guys are just screwing up all over the place.
That's the video that I saw that I don't have right now, where essentially you could see the vapor trail of the missile that went up and then came right back down.
Yeah.
And I believe I've seen.
And they actually admitted it. They actually admitted it not too long ago, from what I understand.
So what's the point of pissing off the rest of the Middle East if you're Iran and attempting to make what initially you would have thought were big potential allies into people that are not allied at all?
Well, I said in an article I wrote up on SHR, by doing that, they took countries that at the very least would have been neutral, if not allied with them, and made them enemies. And that was absolutely moronic on their part. And I've been thinking about it, and I have no idea why. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
I know why. And it's twofold. One, their command and control was completely obliterated, so everybody just started trying to throw missiles at everywhere they knew that we had bases, and we saw how well that worked. But on another point, they started trying to spin up their propaganda machine in all these other countries and saying that it was us that was actually bombing them while trying to hit Iran. And because we always buy all their propaganda, they assumed they would too. And they're like, no, you're full of crap. We know it was you. So yeah. Because we buy all their propaganda hook, line, and sinker every fucking time. I mean, I saw ABC, CBS, NBC all running with the, oh my God, American bombs just killed a bunch of Iranian school kids. I'm like, no,
you can always count on the American prop to advance that madness.
Well, here's for example, Abu Dhabi city center struck by a missile from Iran.
I guess it's a good thing Garfield never got normal in that damn box.
But it's as we say, why go out of your way to do this? I was conjecturing that perhaps this was done to simply throw the Middle East into some kind of chaos in which Donald Trump couldn't really deal with much of it at all. And it was just one of the worst and the weirdest and the strangest tactic that I've seen.
I want to say something about that, because I was thinking about this after some of the first strikes. The fact that so many of the surrounding nations have formed up against Iran, none of that would have been possible if President Trump hadn't laid the groundwork with the Abraham Accords and with all the other peace agreements that he's made and all the deals that he's made, so that now that Iran has broken bad and decided they were going to strike everyone else, they're like, you know what? Yeah, we're not playing that game. And they've all coalesced around President Trump and to a lesser extent Israel, even though they probably still don't like Israel either, just by the fact that they're Muslims. But the fact remains that he has built this coalition in the Middle East that a decade ago, people would have said was absolutely impossible.
Well, and the point that you make, Earl, is great, because a lot of these nations considering this might say, to me, the Abraham Accords look pretty damn good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Here, and I think, and again, I would like all of you to weigh in on this. I think we have to distinctly draw a difference between the people that were controlling Iran and the citizens who are essentially Persians and look at Ramadan as meh, not so much. Here's a guy talking for just a moment. I'd like to play him and then have you guys weigh in.
Targeted military strikes against the IRGC, the Ayatollah's terror army, is not an attack on Iran. It's not an attack on the Iranian people. It's quite literally the opposite. It's targeting the very people who are massacring unarmed civilians on the streets of Iran. Let's not forget, 36,500 civilians, unarmed civilian, massacred in the worst way possible on the streets. We've seen beheadings, we've seen chemical weapons being used, rape, torture, and it's still ongoing. So targeting these people, targeting this regime that is occupying Iran, is not an attack on Iran. No Iranian is calling for an attack on Iran. Rather, Iranians are calling on the West to target the killing machine of the Ayatollah to help them achieve their democratic aspirations on the streets.
So let me say this. We've dropped the ball since 1979.
Oh, yeah.
Every president beforehand has had the opportunity to do something with this. And yet we had individuals who were deciding that they were going to, I don't know how you guys, if you can weigh in. I mean, did anybody think that by shipping pallets of cash, Iran would say, okay, we capitulate. We'll just take all these terrorists and all these little proxy attacks off the board now. Sure, we'll do that.
Well, I said from the beginning, as soon as we started shipping that money over there, I was like, all this is going to do, and I probably said this on one of my shows back then, all this is going to do is fund more terror. And anybody with a decent amount of sense with two firing neurons could see that. But for some reason, the left decided this was, I don't know, the right thing to do for, I don't know, reasons. But it never made any sense to anyone who had even the slightest bit of critical thinking skills.
I take mild offense to what you just said, because I have been told I only have one slightly functioning neuron, and I can still do it. So.
You have at least three, brother. Don't sell yourself short.
But the dealio of that was like I used to ask Jeff Dunitz before he passed away. Jeff Dunitz, Yid with Lid, a great supporter of Israel. I used to ask Jeff on his show, or he would be on my show, or me on his, and I would say, Jeff, I don't get it. Jews in New York consistently vote for all these leftist assholes who essentially hate Jews, especially now. Well, Jeff never saw this. He probably is right now, but he's not around to say, boy, this is crazy, especially now with Mamdani and the people that elected him. I don't get that, just as I don't get, do you think that you can possibly buy? What have we learned from history? And the answer is, in the United States of America, damn near nothing. What is it with leftists that make them think that if you sit down at an even table with a nice cup of chai and sip it between each other, that you can convince horrible enemies to shake hands and say, okay, I won't be a terrorist anymore. I won't be a funder of terrorists. I have never gotten that concept.
It's fairly simple.
It's an abusive relationship. It's the wife beater. That's really what it comes down to. Go ahead, Steve.
The leftist mind tends to think that everybody else is like them and they have no concept of empathy for things that are different. One of the things, if you're going to have empathy for these people, realize that they're as trapped in this murderous nonsense as everybody else is dealing with them. And that doesn't necessarily mean there's an easy way out, but what happens if they don't spend that money funding the terrorists? Who are the terrorists then going to target? They're going to attack them. They raise this rattlesnake to the point where if they don't feed it, it will turn on them. They're in a no-way-out situation. So if you're giving them money, they have to support these terrorist organizations, or the terrorist organizations turn on them.
So it's like Sigmund Quisling, or it's like Neville Chamberlain, or it's like Keir Starmer, already, as I said before, subsumed by muzzies, so he can't go along because he's already been undermined by the people that he let in. The other thing I want to put out is, Iran said, oh, yeah, I know, let's bomb our allies. That's smart. And then the foreign minister here, this guy, said, Abba Agrachi, he says, I'm pleading for Muslim nations to support and come to the aid and defense of Iran after the bombings and the missile attacks. That comes from, Mark 1, Model 1. What the fuck are you thinking?
Wait, did he do that after Iran bombed
because first
Saudi Arabia and Qatar and UAE? Wow.
That's balls.
The timing is, even as missiles were dropping on allies of what you would think allies of Iran, who, in their best of days would go, yeah, I'm not interested in this shit right now. And you drew them in. It's like, what are you thinking?
Well, they were literally trying to stay out of it on purpose. They kept saying, no, you can't use our bases for this. You can't do this. You can't do that. And then the next thing they know Iran is chunking missiles at them and hitting malls and train stations. And they're all like, the fuck, man? What did we do? What? We didn't want none of this, but here, have some of our missiles back. I mean, I really, because of the cultural thing, they're going to have to respond. But I don't think it's going to be anything major. I think it'll be, remember the last time that Israel stomped the crap out of Iran and Iran threw a few missiles back saying, oh, we totally obliterated Israel's Iron Dome, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so I think there will be some reprisals, but I think it'll be some half-hearted stuff because they still really don't like Israel either.
Didn't we have a missile accidentally hit the French embassy when they refused to let us, just after they refused to let us fly planes over their territory one time?
That was a misguided Mark 82 slow retarded bomb. Yeah, but we missed. That was the official story, is we missed.
We just figured if we bombed their embassy, they'd surrender. So,
right?
They
surrendered before we bombed it, but
they have thousands of missiles. Here's the range of all of those and the different types that are on the left. And the ranges from the Sejil, 2,000 kilometers. So Israel is within this area. Most everything is in this area of their area of dominance. So the biggest question my understanding is they still have over 1,000 or more missiles left, which tells me, and this is where I'd like to have you guys weigh in. Okay, we saw the tactics, we saw the attack. It was planned exceedingly well. It was daring, it was smart, and because of that, so many people were killed. Let me see if I can find this article to place up. This is from the Wall Street Journal, and fortunately or unfortunately, especially if you're in portrait mode right now on YouTube, you can't see it. But it says U.S. and Israel exact heavy toll on Iran's leaders, and that's because they knew that they were going to be someplace in particular, specifically at a certain given time. And then the missiles began to fall. My understanding is that Israel had an individual in there who was passing intel over to Israel, passing intel over to us. And as we know in life, timing is everything. But I mean, the major figures, the Ayatollah, the office of the supreme leader, the civilian hierarchy, military hierarchy, and it just goes down. And here's all the guys, by the way, if you want to find out or look at this article, go to, when I'm finished here, go to my Rumble channel. I don't have enough space on YouTube to insert all the articles and links that I have here. But on the Rumble channel, you can find all of the articles and more. I will place more up to find that, hey, I'm not just making this stuff up. The other thing I want to talk about is we talked about the tactics. We talked about the attack. So my question is, what do you guys surmise is going to be the length of time to which we, with Israel, continue, and is one way to attack the attack by Democrats, like deciding that they're going to shut down the government? Is money going to potentially become an issue where the Democrats are saying, okay, that's it, no more? I mean, tomorrow is going to be explosive. Anybody want to weigh in? I know that's wild. That's very wide, but what do you see as the continuing, say for the next week, the future? How long is this going to go? The money, Congress, like that. And I'll start with Lyle. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I just saw 3 Stratotankers take off from Pease Air Force Base in New Hampshire, probably about an hour ago. That's a long-term carrier of fuel. They can operate for 24 hours without landing. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say this is going to go on for at least another week and a half.
Okay.
Just the attack portions. Of course, with the political portions, you're going to have instant bloodshed from the Democrats' side coming out 8 a.m. tomorrow morning Eastern time. It's going to be pandemonium as far as they're concerned.
It's going to go nuts.
No, absolutely. They're going to try everything that possibly can to shut it down, to stop funding, to everything from stopping the funding to threatening impeachment to everything, trying to say the War Powers Act, try to pull it back, everything that you could possibly think of to stop this. Whether they're right or wrong, it really doesn't matter at this point. There's a job that needs to be done, and it's almost done. Just looking at it.
Rick Robinson, any thoughts about this?
Well, I think the Democrats, yes, I expect things to be really explosive tomorrow for one, but I think the Democrats are about to get a rude awakening because I've heard about 6 or 7 that are about to break the other way because
really, I heard Fetterman did, but I hadn't heard anybody else.
Fetterman did, and there are several in the House that are thinking of breaking the other way. So I don't know how well this is going to go for them because Iran has been a big issue for us for a long time, and most everybody who's been alive since at least the early 70s knows because we were watching it as on TV as children going, what the hell's going on in Iran? And that's kind of the generational divide. The 20s and 30s are like, yeah, I don't know why we're in this. Those of us that lived through it are like, I know exactly why we're in this, and we should have done this 40 years ago. Now we can disagree about whether he's doing it right, etc. Because he didn't publicly declare war or whatever. But at this point, that ship has already sailed. The War Powers Act gives him the authority to do this for up to 60 days, regardless. I disagree with the War Powers Act in general. I don't think it should have ever even been a thing. But as far as how long it may go on, I guess it depends. I know Trump was already talking about possible off ramps, which sent Mark Levin into a tizzy the other day. So that was fun. But I mean, I don't know. I think the next thing we're probably going to find out, because the only way this is actually going to change is with regime change. And I don't think we're going to be putting boots on the ground, but I wouldn't be surprised if Israel doesn't start soon.
Earl Jackson, what do you happen to think? The other thing I want to mention is, okay, a little bit of humor injected in here. There was a temporary appointed acting supreme leader, some guy named Arafat, and he was killed after news strikes on Tehran. Anybody else up for the job?
Apparently his son.
I think Marco Rubio's available.
He can do it all, damn it.
He's going to single-handedly stop the unemployment rate.
Have you guys seen that post where it's like, and next up to be the potential leader of Iran, and then it cuts to the president, and from deep inside the White House, you hear this: Donald Trump, Marco, and Marco Rubio responding, "Hello,
hello, damn it, I hate it when that happens." You know, the other thing that, well, I'm sorry, Earl, please continue. BZ, shut up.
Yeah, this is probably going to go for probably another week and a half, 2 weeks before Iran finally says uncle. And yeah, I do think Israel is going to put boots on the ground and actually do some ground fighting over there. I don't think that's going to happen for us. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want it to happen. I like the way that things are going right now. The casualties on our side notwithstanding, 3 is too many, obviously. But I think that this is going to break our way in the next couple of weeks. As far as what's going to happen this week in the House and in Congress in general, I hadn't heard that there were some Democrats who were going to break our way. But even aside from that, they were going to make a lot of noise, but I don't think they were going to actually be able to do anything. It was going to be a fight, and they were going to, like I said, make a lot of noise and threaten all kinds of things. They've already threatened impeachment and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, this is going to, I believe, I pray, end with minimal casualties and the freedom of Iran.
And Stephen Hall, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I think Earl is right. It's going to be a lot of noise and it's going nowhere. And that's going to last for a week or two. And then they'll keep droning on about it for the next 2 or 3 months. I think militarily they're correct. It's just going to be kind of one-sided. And if there are boots on the ground, it will come from other people, not the United States. The United States may have some in there, but I'm doubting it. There are 2 things, however, that worry me. And 2 possible outcomes I don't think people are really foreseeing, because that chaos that they like to sow, there are enough lunatics out there who will go into these foreign countries and committing random acts under the name of support with them. And I think that could really blow up in the face of the people who've been supporting a lot of the illegal immigration, not just here, but in England and France and these other countries, just random attacks of people who are going, we're doing this for Iran. I also see the possibility that if we do have forces go in that are allied forces from that coalition, you have a population in Iran wanting to break free from Islam. And the biggest fear these allies have will be a country departing from Islam. I know that you have one that's Shia, one that's Sunni, but most of the people in Iran are not.
Mm-hmm.
And who's forming the new government worries me greatly when you have people who are suddenly in these allies, that they may maintain an Islamic government even if it's more open to Sunni and Shia and not necessarily reflecting the will of the people. I may be wrong, and I hope I am. But those are the 2 things that worry me the most.
Okay. I'm going to add this to the stage right now. 3 Americans were killed. This is, I think, after 24 hours. Now, the interesting point is that my understanding is that they were killed in Jordan. and there's no information that I've been able to determine yet.
They said that they weren't going to release any information until the family
Okay.
had been notified.
All right, that was the information, because I'm curious if there's anything to indicate the circumstances of that. But let me throw this out here, because there's so many places I wanted to go tonight. And thanks to everybody for being here. I greatly appreciate it. By the way, in case you're wondering, folks, you're listening to
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And thanks to all my guests for being here tonight. Everybody listening, KLRNX, Twitch, the SHR Media YouTube channel, and all points in between, and then later on podcast. God bless you all. Thank you for being here, and my great guests. The big question that my little fuzzy brain went to as you were speaking was, okay, could this be the official opening of the midterms? Are Democrats going to say something like, okay, this is the opportunity of a lifetime, and we're going to ride this hard down the throat of Donald Trump and everybody else that's going to be up for the primaries in June and also the midterms in November? You know, let the festivities begin, because we're going to take so much, there's going to be so much mileage that you guys will yield us, Democrats, from this. We're going to take that ball and run with it like you've never seen before. Rick Robinson.
I'll be honest, I was reading the chat, so go to somebody else.
Okay. All right. Stephen Hall.
I think they're good. Oh, good.
I think they've already started that. Oh, go ahead, Earl. Was it LYLE? Which one? I heard it. I didn't see who was talking.
Earl's probably got something more pointed than I do. Go ahead, Earl.
Well, the thing is, I was reading the chat too.
Oh, okay. Then I'll go. So, no, I think they're going to get their mileage out of this. I think the advantage of it happening right now, however, is the fact that we're still young in the year. It's only March 1st, March 2nd now, if you're over here with me on the East Coast.
Damn future boy.
I'll let you know what happens. Turn back. But no, it's still early in the year, and I think the more that they wave and rattle the sabers on this, and the shorter that this little war action takes, the less momentum and steam they're going to have come June, to say that, hey, they to really get their anti-war Democrats up there in arms over it. I certainly don't think that they're going to have enough momentum going into November off of this, unless it becomes a quagmire. I don't see this as it is right now, because it has been quite decisive thus far, going into day two. We'll see what day 2 and day 3 bring, but right now it seems to be pretty decisive. And as long as we don't make the mistakes that we have done with Iraq and Afghanistan, where we're doing nation building, I think that the Republican Party will be just fine come midterms. Let me just put it to you this way. As a military guy, we had one job. We're going to kill you and break your shit. That's it. That's what we're trained to do. I'm not here to tell you how to run your country. I'm not here to tell you that, we're God's saviors, and we're going to come in and tell you to be, good Republicans and Democrats, and, God bless America and all that other stuff. We come here, we kill you, we break your shit, and we leave. That's what we're trained to do.
And that is what I've said for a long time. And I knew that soldiers appreciate that and believe that, because my feeling has always been, you do not apply our beloved military soldiers to any point where they're there for, say, societal purposes. If you don't believe the situation is warranted where you need to kill people and you need to break shit, then you keep our beloved military out of it. Period.
Absolutely.
End of statement. You do not get them involved. They are not a societal changer. Nope. And yet it's been, that is one of the things in retrospect, and I'd also like all of your opinion on this. Bush pissed me off on any number of levels. He spent like a drunken sailor. I'm sorry, that's an insult to drunken sailors. He decided that he was going to throw billions of dollars to AIDS in Africa with nothing accomplished, then decided that he was going to create some kind of a situation in the Middle East where he was going to democratize everybody. These people don't give a shit about democracy. They're all about holding people down. None of this made sense. And then, of course, the lovely Patriot Act. And then just when the other agencies of intelligence, 17 of which there are now, couldn't communicate before with 9/11, then you fragmented all of these communities even further, creating Homeland Security, DHS, blah, 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 blah.
You know,
you should really tell people how you really feel.
When 9/11 happened, I was just getting into paying attention to politics. I mean, I knew things, but I didn't really start paying attention until just before that happened. And I remember thinking, as the aftermath was unfolding, I remember thinking, oh, history is going to remember George Bush. He's going to be great. And then as I've gotten older and as I've gotten more in tune with what's going on politically, and as I paid more attention, I'm like, how did we even elect this guy in the first place?
Well,
he was one of my heroes for the longest time, and then as things have gone on, and I started figuring out what they actually did with the Patriot Act and everything else, I'm just like, this was terrible. But I mean, back to the question you asked me earlier when I defaulted. I agree with Lyle. If this goes well enough, don't get me wrong, they'll get mileage out of it for a couple of months, one way or the other. But if this goes well enough, there won't be enough momentum to carry them through to the midterms. And I'm going to say this: at this point, we keep saying we want people that once we vote them into the office, that they do the right thing and be damned the consequences. We keep saying we want that until somebody actually does it, and then we're like, maybe they went too far. You know what? If this works, I don't care.
Because I was thinking about that the other day.
And I said this the last night on X. As a father of daughters and a grandfather to granddaughters, I always could kind of logically thought I understood what the women of Iran were going through until I saw them dancing in the streets. And then I realized that my logic had failed me completely. And for the party that keeps saying they are the party of women to come down on the wrong side of this, if you can't see what it is that we're trying to do and the reason that we're trying to do it, then fuck the lot of you.
Well, and for my next trick, I'm going to make the Democrats support Iran.
Exactly. He does it every time, and they fall for it every time. Every single time they support the exact wrong thing.
There are only two cadres of people now who support Iran: the Democrats and the UN. And
well, the UN doesn't count. Let's just face it. That's just the organization.
I always thought the UN should be shipped back over to Brussels where it belongs, and then we should turn that beautiful building into a bunch of condos for homeless veterans.
Agree 100%.
Sounds like the movie Heavy Metal.
Like the movie what?
Heavy Metal. The UN was turned into low-rent housing.
Oh, damn. I saw it a long time ago. I used to subscribe to the damn magazine, for God's sake.
That's assuming that the UN ever pays their own damn rent. So
right.
You can imagine the parking tickets that they've screwed up to this point. Let me go here now also. And I really want you guys to weigh in on this, if you would, please.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm seeing a whole bunch of traffic going through OS Intel right now about we're hitting Iran hard right now. Okay.
All right.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Is there a website that you would like to refer people to? Or you're just going to monitor that for right now?
It's all being done through X right now. I'll throw a couple links into. You can throw it up there for them if you wish.
Okay. All righty. Here's another video that I wanted to play. This is where maybe this is where it occurred, but Iran hit Jordan of all places. And like somebody mentioned here before, this is going to do nothing but essentially strengthen the Abraham Accords, for God's sake. Whoever thought that this was wonderful strategy, or maybe you're simply not thinking in essentially the heat of the battle. But the other thing that I want to bring up, there's somebody in chat. Lyle is sending me something. So as I pull this up and look at it, let me also put this in here.
Oh my God. Sorry, I just pulled it up. That's a huge explosion. Whew. Ouch.
Let me put, see if I got this.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
Oh, well, that's okay. As we look here, here's Iran. Here are all the places that were struck in Iran by the U.S. and Israel. Now, if you look in the middle of that graphic down below, you can see in blue it says Strait of Hormuz. Well, the Strait of Hormuz is tactically extremely important. And that's where a large percentile of oil flows. Let me pull this back up. And I'll play that X in just a moment. But things that I think need to be mentioned about the Strait of Hormuz now, with Iran attacking neutral or allied Muslim countries and hitting like luxury hotels and airports and residential buildings, assume you're going to hit military targets, U.S. military targets, but they went for more. I think, as I mentioned before, it was a gambit to try to get President Trump to back off, as I think they were hoping that they were going to blow up the entire Middle East because of that. And now what they've done is they've created enemies that are now aligned against Iran. Like, what the hell? The other thing that I think Iran was hoping is to absolutely explode oil prices, influencing or even closing the Strait of Hormuz. A lot of transshippers, tankers, etc., have said no, we're not interested in doing this right now. But a couple of points that I'd like to illustrate is, okay, of the 600 million barrels of oil that flow through the Strait of Hormuz, 3 million barrels a day go through the Strait. 50% of that Iranian oil goes to China. So if you cut that, then Iranian profits crash and China's oil supply is impacted. It was already impacted because of Venezuela. 50%.
I said this the other day. Sorry to interrupt, but I said this the other day that these strikes, because of the impact to the oil that China was getting and stuff like that, President Trump pretty much just reset the world order and set the United States up as we were already the world's foremost superpower, but he set us up for tremendous success if we play this correctly, with China's oil imports down, Iran not able to export, and taking control of Venezuela's oil when he did a few weeks back. I mean, this is going to be tremendous for us.
Well, just like we said during Afghanistan, we said, Russia's probably going to be impacted from this. Mm-hmm. China's probably going to be impacted from this. Well, it turns out that with this, Trump is so stupid. Trump is playing chess, kids. Trump is playing, like Spock's chess, so to speak, because now China is going to be even further impacted. Russia is going to be further impacted. And speaking of impacts, thanks for sending this to me. This is from Lyle. Let's play this. This is Iran. Once more.
God, I love a good explosion.
Okay, since Lyle and I were both in EOD for a time, I have to say that, you know, I'll just be plain. Sometimes I get woodies and explosions. Okay, that's one of the reasons that we did what we did. We just
Better
love.
than Viagra.
I'm telling you, some of us like to watch shit blow up, and I'll be the first to admit it. Now, there's nothing like a good explosion. So that having been said, I think somebody sent me also something else in chat. But you know, we were talking about the Strait of Hormuz, where we're talking about the impact of oil. 50%, like I said, of that Iranian oil goes to China. And then through the Strait of Hormuz, 50% of Venezuela's oil output was going to China. And so essentially, China is not going to side with Iran or the Houthis, which we haven't even really mentioned yet. Lyle, I think you mentioned it, the Houthis in the first hour. So China has a very big vested interest in keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. So it's not just a huge change for the people in Iran. It could potentially, and who knows, but I'm just kind of throwing it out there. It could be potentially a big Middle East tension reducer, which is weird. I don't know. Well, if for no other reason than unfunded terrorist organizations are not happy terrorist organizations. So, like I say, it impacts China, Russia, North Korea. It's sort of a global destabilization kind of thing. And let's see if I can find this. The other point I wanted to make until I get there, and I see the other things that are in chat. What do we think is going to happen now with, because anybody with half a brain knows that there are terrorist cells inside the United States of America.
I think we already saw one yesterday.
We have a lone wolf. And I think this occurred in Texas. I'll put this up. So there's a guy that was wearing a Muslim hoodie, property of Allah, I think his hoodie said, and he goes into a bar and two are killed. And so they go sneaking around in his car and, oh my gosh, look, there's a Quran in his automobile. 2 killed, 14 injured. And unfortunately, I believe that will be a door that is beginning to open. And I throw it out in this fashion because if sleeper cells cannot be activated like as an instigator, like the attack on Iran, what's a sleeper cell for? Now, we saw in DC, there was somebody that got out, they got in an accident and they began stabbing lots of people. They shut a parkway down. But I believe that turns out that was just some idiot acting on rage and like road rage. But what do you guys think is going to be the continuing impact for this in terms of either the sleeper cells or the lone wolf or somebody that's going to be magically motivated to go out and do harm to U.S. citizens?
I think this is going to be, I think we're going to see a lot more of this. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more of it in Texas. I mean, Texas has been Islamized more than you could possibly imagine. Something I've been talking about for a long time.
Which is so bizarre.
It really is. It's bizarre until you follow the money. Until you follow the money. And when you realize that Greg Abbott and a lot of these other politicians in Texas are funded by these wealthy Islamic businessmen and entities, then you and they're funneling or they're allowing these projects, these Islamic projects, and these cities to continue and to move forward. When you realize that, then you understand why it's happening. I mean, they're opening 2 mosques a month, I think, in Texas right now. In Dallas Fort Worth there, I think there's like 60.
And Epic City, which
it's the Meadows now. It's the Meadows. Get it right.
Oh, of course.
But yeah.
And the naming of the using the word epic in our attack, I'm sure that was completely unintentional.
And it's not just that, but I mean, there's one in Murphy, Texas. There's one in San Antonio, or in and around San Antonio. I mean, they are moving. They just opened up an Islamic, I don't want to say library, but they opened up a $1 million Islamic center inside the campus of UT. I mean, they just elected 2 Pakistani Muslims to Congress, to the state Congress in Texas. And so when you realize what they're doing, and it's not just Texas, but Texas is obviously the biggest and the most prominent. And if they can take over Texas,
it can go anywhere.
Taking over the rest of the country is going to be a piece of cake.
Okay, when I saw
that's what they're trying to do. And so I think that to get back to the point, I think that what happened last night on 6th Street in Texas, I think that we're going to see more of that happen as this goes on.
There's a greater concentration of muzzies in Texas, and anybody, I have no fucking filter, and I don't really give a shit what people think about me. Islam is an infection, okay? Like cancer, it needs to be excised, period. Not, moderate Muslim, zero. There is no such thing as a real moderate. There is no such thing as a moderate Muslim. There's only a person that calls himself a Muslim that is not practicing appropriately.
What we say in Christianity is that there's cultural Christians, people who were raised in a so-called Christian household, and they may or may not go to church, and they may or may not say they believe in the Bible and stuff like that. And those are the cultural Muslims. They were raised Muslim, their family's Muslim, and they may or may not practice. But at the end of the day, they're Muslims, and there is no such thing as a moderate.
I completely believe that. As a matter of fact, that deserves one of those. I want to put this up. This was just sent to me by LYLE, and let me see if I can get this to play. This is from Telegram. Lyle Armstrong sent this to me in the surreptitious covert chat. Shh, don't reveal that information. It says the IDF launches additional waves of strikes in Lebanon. Let me see if I can get this to play. Maybe I can. There we go. That's as big as I can embiggen it. This is a strike on Hezbollah terrorists that occurred overnight. So the shit is still getting thrown back and forth. And in terms of terrorism and whatnot. Also, this, I think we were just talking about, Houthis. And this just came in. And Lyle, I think you sent this to me, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that was pretty sure that was Steve.
Oh, okay. Steve, thank you for that. And this is a perfect point. Houthis signal renewed Red Sea shipping attacks after U.S.-Israeli strikes. So they're going to focus again on this. So this is not over. You can attempt to decapitate the snake, but some lizards grow parts back. And so this is...
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, but the problem is if we were going to decapitate the snake, we should have done that in 1980. At this point, this snake has embedded itself, it's reproduced, it's propagated, it's everywhere. So, I mean, back to the whole...
This is Medusa at this point.
Yeah, back to the whole homegrown terrorism stuff. They can try, and don't trust me, it's gonna happen. But I think they're about to find out the same thing Japan was afraid of. Once they start popping their heads up, we're just going to start putting bounties on them, so it won't matter. Just saying.
Well, Japan.
The traditional Muslim strategy in war or in politics is just simple overwhelm with numbers.
Yeah.
With collective. That's how they try to attack all of our ships, and it always fails because just if we get enough of them, we can take them down. And
well, that's what
is
they're
true
doing in Europe and stuff like that.
If you got enough of them, you take over the street, you take over the neighborhood.
Yep.
Well, and that comes with the sheer numbers in force. UK is sunk. I don't think UK is retrievable at this point.
They will tell you, we are here, we're taking over, we will outbreed you. They have said it.
Well, do we doubt that? I cannot say at this point.
The evidence is clear.
That
apparently
the evidence is there.
Apparently, a lot of leftists.
They're getting subsidies for having kids, so what do you expect?
Yeah,
they're going to milk that for all it's worth.
Well,
children are expendable to them. Something we don't tend to think about. We tend to invite trouble for ourselves so that our kids will live better. They tend to have kids so that they have more power.
Well, as I've said for quite some time, demography is prophecy. Rick, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just saying we basically, we treat our children like they matter. They treat theirs like cannon fodder on purpose. So,
well, and to enable that, you must have the numbers, and the numbers are coming. So, Earl, when you mentioned, and when I first saw this, I thought that's utter bullshit. Then I started seeing it on a lot of other sites in terms of Greg Abbott. Now, there were times when I thought Abbott was a pretty smart guy, installed some fairly decent common sense laws, but then it's discovered that he is, and repeat this again, please, Earl, about Governor Abbott of Texas.
He has been taking a lot of money, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but he has been taking a lot of money from
14 million was the number I saw.
What's that?
14 million to his campaign funds from
an Islamic businessman. I can't remember who it is or which country he's from, but yeah, and he's been taking that money, and that's why stuff like Epic City and the one in Murphy, Texas, and some of the other ones, that's why they're getting permits to open halal restaurants all over the place. Because they're throwing that money at them, and he's taking it. And some people will sell out this country for their bank account, and he's one of them. And he had a lot of people fooled. He had me fooled for a while because I hadn't really dug into what he was doing. I'm thankful I don't live in Texas anymore, but he especially during COVID and stuff like that, he was following Ron DeSantis's lead and doing a lot of things that a lot of conservatives liked. But in the background, he was taking money and advancing these Islamic causes.
So yeah, I'm sorry, I just find that nuts, and I will not link this directly to an individual just on account of because. But in my opinion, and I preface that, in my opinion, some people who commit treason should suffer the consequences under the USC codes for treason. Period. End of statement. You could start with certain personnel that are no longer in charge in the military and go all sorts of places with that. Rick Robinson, I want to add this too. I'm going to play about, what do I got here? About almost 2 minutes of a young lady talking about operating in Iran under Islam. And folks, if you love your daughters, your wives, women, then you do not want Islam anywhere near them.
Absolutely not.
It's just insane. So I'm going to put this up, embiggen her, and play her for about 2 minutes because we all need to hear what she's going to say.
In Iran, you can get arrested for walking a dog, and then they can take your dog away because according to Islam, dogs are najis, which means unclean. In Iran, you will get arrested, not can, will, if you're a female solo singer. It is against the law. In Iran, not that you have to wear hijab, but if your hijab is not to the liking of the regime forces, they can push you forcefully into a van and take you to jail. And then things that happen in those jails, let's just say that they're not ethical. In Iran, you are not allowed to change your religion or choose your religion. If you do so, you will be executed. In Iran, they would line us up as children, force hijab on us, and force us to chant death to America. I mean, I wouldn't call that school. I would call that a cult that is trying to brainwash children into a terrorist mindset. In Iran, there are stations with regime forces, and they can stop your car and see if the person next to you is a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or you're married to. If you're not married to them, you can get arrested. In 5 years, imagine that a Big Mac went from $6 to $600. That's exactly what happened in Iran. Well, roughly, I think it's even more than that. And everything I'm telling you is not even the worst thing that's happening in Iran. Every time people request a regime change and they start to protest, the regime shuts off the internet and starts shooting people with
just like they did here.
Military-grade weapons. Children. Regime forces in the past 2 to 3 weeks have killed more than 50,000 people. So yeah, if you have opinions about how Iranians should feel, perhaps you should go to Iran, live with the regime, and maybe raise a child or two, and then we can speak about it. In Iran,
I cannot think
I saw that.
anything more succinct than that. So the people that are saying, oh my gosh, Islam isn't that bad, we can coexist. No, we fucking can't.
No, we cannot. And we've known that for the longest time. And one of the things, and I think this came up in one of the chats on this network recently, somebody had pointed out that when we did the treaty that ended the war with what they called the Musliman back then, that we explicitly said that United States was not a Christian nation. And that is taken out of context all over the place now because it's in there. When in reality, it was just to make the Islamists understand that we weren't going to try to convert them because that's what they do. That's not what we're trying to do. We're just tired of you taking our ships and attacking us, and we wanted to stop. We are not one of these countries that's trying to burden everyone else with our religion. So we do actually want to coexist with you. That was probably one of our first mistakes because we showed them weakness. That as a culture, Islamists do not respond to weakness in a positive fashion. This is why every time we've handed them money, the exact opposite of what we've expected to happen has happened because they see that as weakness. They don't like weakness. When we show them weakness, they see an opportunity to stomp all over us. And the worst thing about this is not just that this has happened. It's that after 9/11, we elected somebody who was so fucking stupid and was basically a turnip in a suit who threw the doors to the country wide open and just said, oh, everybody can come in because we want everybody to get along. And now we have millions of, the thing about it is, if this pops off, and I think it might, the closer Iran gets, because right now they're still feeling froggy a little bit. They keep trying to put people into positions of power. We keep taking them out. Eventually, they're either going to run out of missiles or people that they can put in power. And then at that point, that'll be when they start saying, okay, all you terror cells that we have everywhere, time to get started. Now, I think it's already going on. I just saw there's been a second stabbing attack in the D.C. area now in 14 hours. Yep. That shooting that just happened.
Yep.
Yeah. So these things are starting to pop off. And I'm sorry, I am not one of these people that believes in coincidence. Three attacks in less than 48 hours when everything has been on lockdown around here up until now. Yeah, I don't buy it.
There's also this aspect that I want to throw out there, and I'd like everybody to weigh in on it too. Now people are talking about, in jest, I saw on X, a bunch of people from Britain go, hey, us next. Okay, President Trump, please come on over.
You know what?
Would.
We've bailed
Please
your asses
liberate
out
us.
twice. We've bailed your asses out twice. Fix your own shit.
And now there are people who are saying, and I think Trump was one of them, who said something similar to, Cuba, you're looking pretty attractive these days, sitting 90 miles away from Florida. And then this, which I found on X, which I think is pretty amazing. Is this a trend? It's the British Patriot. Great guy to follow, by the way. This just in. Massive scale protests erupt in Brazil, demanding President Lula to resign. Protesters accuse his government of rampant corruption, crushing free speech, and growing authoritarianism. Perhaps the world is becoming tired of dictatorships / Islam. So that's more than 100 people. And so I ask you guys here, are we seeing a bit of a reversal in some fashion? Perhaps a bit of a trend, shall we say? Does the worm turn? I'm asking, just throwing it out there. Lyle first.
Oh,
I'm thinking you're up. Yeah, you're right. It is turning. The problem with it is how long will it turn for? How long will the powers that be allow it to turn? You know, and it's just kind of like one of those things. Like right now, we've got people everywhere, you know, all over the place, dancing in the streets. You know, free Iran, you know, free Israel, free this, free that. How long will that be allowed? We've seen these things kind of peter out after a time, and you know, it's actually kind of sad that, you know, because we can affect real change. I was actually talking about it on my show the other night, you know, just getting back to our Constitution. Imagine if, you know, you had 1,000 people come out and protest to just get Congress back to Article 1, Section 8, you know, and that's it. You know, what glorious things we could possibly do with that in our country.
Well, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, one of the things when I was feeling kind of stupid back on my blog is, hey, why don't we have a committee that before every bill goes through, before it goes anywhere, we have a committee, this is how stupid I was, that examines the bill and the language for constitutionality. Only then can it proceed. Yeah, that's how I was.
Right?
Well, then we couldn't get 1,500-page bills that we have to pass before we find out what's in them.
It's just there is so much work that needs to be done in DC. I'm gonna start to wrap the show up, and in general, I'd like to ask each of you guys to weigh in on. Okay, we know tomorrow's going to be a shit show, which could be kind of fun.
Makes for good content.
Yes, definitely.
There's gonna be a lot to talk about.
keeps us podcasters guessing. But for the next week, any thoughts as to where this may go for that next week? Anything that you think is going to be more immediate than, say, long term?
I think that we might see a little more, one or two more incidents of Islamic violence.
Okay.
I think that is very likely. And I think that the infighting in Congress, the chirping we're going to hear from the left in terms of the War Powers Act and and talking about impeaching President Trump and an illegal war. And I think that is just going to be off the charts for the next week.
Okay. Lyle, any thoughts?
100% with you on this one. If they don't actually drop the articles of impeachment, they're definitely going to be threatening it.
Oh yeah.
As far as the sleeper cells, I honestly, just looking at the chatter that I've been seeing and the stuff that I've been through over the years, he's absolutely 100% correct there as well. We're not talking lone wolves. We're going to start to see small team movements. The head of the snake was cut off, but like you said, Medusa is out there. We only cut one head off. Now we're talking, they've been let loose. The chains off the dog, so to speak, and they're just going to start, finding their targets of opportunity and find the softest target they possibly can. So, if anybody, really feels the need, they need to keep their head on a swivel. Take care of your families, take care of yourselves, and be a little bit more vigilant when you're out and about.
Could I summarize that, Lyle, in one word? Carry.
Stay strapped or get clapped.
Yep.
There you go.
Stephen Hall, any final thoughts about this? What we may be facing this week or in the kind of semi-immediate future? I know things are so nebulous, but give it a shot.
I'm terrible at predictions, but one thing we're going to see are all of the constitutional and lawyers running around Twitter and on the internet explaining why that president is under the duty and the declaration of war is only for Congress, and ignoring the last 50 years of history just for their legal pontification. You're just going to hear that constantly, that suddenly is everybody's an expert on that 73 Act and know exactly what it means.
And it's only to be applied when we don't like it. Rick Robinson, any thoughts about?
Well, since everybody's taken the major stuff and kind of all come to concurrence on it, because I don't have anything to add there. The one thing that I did find interesting is the growing number of Cubans in Miami that are now calling for President Trump to bomb Cuba. So I don't think that's happening in the next week, but no. I think it might be coming soon.
I did see a meme asking what we were going to call Cuba once we had taken over.
That was actually before all this started, I think, which was even
funnier.
Yeah,
it was right before that.
But yeah, now that people in Venezuela are cheering, and you've got Iranians chilling, the Miami Cubans are feeling a little left out. They're like, hey,
Mario Cubio was one of the answers I saw.
But yeah, so as far as the rest of it, the left is going to be completely unhinged for most of this week. And again, I don't know how any of this is going to end, and it could wind up the same way that Iraq wound up, because in the beginning, when we saw how happy they were that we were there, we were like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. And then it turned into a shit show. So I don't know. It just depends on how we handle it from this point forward. And that's why I think the best thing for us to do is to let Israel, a neighbor country, go in there and help them fix shit, because they know more about that region than we're ever going to know. We can pretend that we're Mideast experts. And I know we have a few on staff with our organizations, and we have a few on staff supposedly with our government, but I would rather, if anybody's going to nation build there, I would much rather see Israel do that part. But I think if we can bring democracy back to Iran, and for them, they do believe it was a democracy. So that's why I'm using that word. Then President Trump's going to go down to the history books. But even if it failed, he's doing exactly what I always say I want politicians to do. I'm going to send you into office. I want you to do the right thing, because we know what the right thing is, and be damned the consequences. And he's done that in so many different places that even if it blows up in his face, at least somebody tried to do something. Let's not forget, this has been a problem for us since the 50s. This was our mess. We made it. We meddled in their society. We changed it. And it's been a detriment to us ever since. So it's way past time that I don't want to be the world's police anymore, but I also don't want to be the country that doesn't clean up our messes. And this was definitely one of our messes, and we left it alone for way too long.
Well, in terms of Cuba,
Agreed.
you can say the exact same thing. We got
exactly.
messed around with Cuba, and here we sit today. Somebody sent me this. It may have been Earl. It may have been Lyle. I have no memory of that, but I have to play this before we leave. And then before we leave, I want to come back to everybody and have everyone tell me about your shows and where you can be found. So I must say, I have not seen this before, so I will laugh when I see it, but it looks good. So here we go. I like that.
Oh, no, that was me.
And somebody said in the comments, you probably can't see it over on the right. It said, Trump got 34 felonies, 3 baby mamas, been shot, kidnapped a sitting president. He's running our government like death row records from the 90s.
Look at Marco. I love it.
Hegseth isn't bad.
And Heg says with the cornrows, that's awesome.
Okay. All right. I gots to say, Mister, I gots to know. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Lyle, where can people find you and locate your show, sir?
You can get me on X at LYLE_Armstrong. That's the easiest way to find me. But our show is on SHR Media under Beer and Bullstein. We're live every Friday and Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Bullstein, Lyle.
Bullstein.
Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And a good night to you. Stephen Hall, where can people find you?
Well, I'm on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it at Stephen L. Hall, but I'll also have the show Inquiry on KLRN Radio at klrnradio.com this Wednesday and every second Wednesday from there on.
Alrighty, Stephen Hall, thank you kindly for being here, sir. Appreciate it. And Big E Earl Jackson, where can people find your show, sir?
Well, I am at Mission Ready Men on X and all the socials, and also on SHR Media, Mission Ready Men Briefing, and you can catch me there on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Central.
Earl, thank you so kindly for being here. Rowdy Rick Robinson, where can folks find you? I know it's a literal, it's a litany. It never ends. When do you sleep? Sir, go ahead. Hit me.
First of all, don't look for me. It's a trap. But no, as far as normally you can find me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, noon Eastern, doing the Rick Robinson show. That's how things usually kick off. I will not have a show tomorrow because I'm going to be with a friend at the hospital. But I may do a makeup show Tuesday sometime. Because you may even wind up doing a late night show tomorrow night because I usually do anyway. Because there's probably going to be lots of stuff to talk about. Anyway, God. I also do the America Off the Rails show every Monday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. I do Men Explain Poorly every Tuesday night, again, 10 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday, I host, and produce pretty much everything that's involved in the lineup there on the schedule, except for the SHR Media stuff and the Behind the Enemy Line stuff. Thursday night, Jen and Rick, 10 p.m. Eastern. Friday night, He Said, She Said, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Every other Saturday night, Juxtaposition, 10 p.m. Eastern. Also produce the Loftus Party podcast, which drops on Tuesdays. I write for the loftusparty.com, twitchy.com, and there's another misfitspolitics.com. I was like, I know there's another one in there somewhere. And I also run the production company Kung Fu Rick Productions, which just launched, and we're now putting out content outside of KLR Radio and music videos and all the above. So as far as when I sleep, second Tuesday of next week.
Okay.
That's when I sleep.
At least you have it scheduled. Rick Robinson, God bless you, sir. Thanks for being here tonight. Get some sleep, mister.
That's the plan.
All righty. And to everybody else, thank you for being here tonight. I'm BZ from BZ's Saloon. You can see me Tuesday and Thursday nights, customarily, unless I have a lot of stuff backed up that I got to talk about. So on Tuesday and Thursday nights, I'm at 8 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. You can find me on X and primarily the SHR Media YouTube channel. If you would subscribe, that would be wonderful to everyone. Thank you for being here tonight, staying up so late. Everybody have a great weekend, and Hold on to your hats. Tomorrow's going to be some wild ass shit. Good night.